Tom, let's move on to, we talked about Hamas a little bit, touched on it. We're still in a war, we being U.S. ally Israel, in Gaza. And it's 23 months, it's almost the third anniversary, the beginning of that war, October 7th, 2023 was, 2022 was the beginning of that war. 23, sorry. So we're almost the end of 2 years. You're right, sorry. So everyone, I was just attending a conference where there was a lot of discussion of the day after, what happens the day after. And everyone agreed that if there is an agreed upon plan, that will help lead to a sooner ending to the war. Right. How do you see the day after?
Well, one of the things that is interesting is you are starting to see right now, September 2025, a greater degree of consensus around some of the key elements of what has to happen to bring about a lasting peace between Israel and Gaza. I know with the current offensive underway, that seems farther away than ever, but it is actually interesting. You're starting to see changes in a number of key attitudes.
Like, for instance?
Well, so for example, there is an almost universal consensus by everybody except Hamas that Hamas needs to lay down its weapons. There is a consensus, even from Hamas, that they have to give up governance in Gaza. But the difference is between Israel saying that Hamas must lay down its weapons so that there can be no repeat of October 7th, and Hamas insisting that it can keep its weapons so that it could retake power whenever it chose, start another attack, and then that would bring around an Israeli response that would destroy whatever Arab countries would
build there,
would rebuild,
which is what has happened in Lebanon, right? For
exactly.
Instance. Yeah.
And so
we don't want to repeat the Hezbollah experience there.
Precisely. And so one of the things that's quite noteworthy, although it got only a moderate amount of attention, is a group of countries without the United States and Israel came out with in July what they called the New York Declaration, which calls for Hamas to lay down its weapons. Now, this group of nations includes Arab League governments, it includes Qatar, it includes many European governments, and to recognize that they will not be able to rebuild Gaza until Hamas is disarmed is actually a major shift. And it needs to be acknowledged that although there are many other problems with what was in the New York Declaration, it's not a post-war plan that could actually work. Nevertheless, we're starting to see this international consensus coming together. And so the question now is, how do you actually enforce that?
Well, I think the IDF is working on that. Right?
That's one approach. But ultimately, there need to be other troops going in from Arab states, from European states. President Trump has said there would be no U.S. boots on the ground in Gaza, but all of us have noticed he has been very careful not to rule out U.S. leadership. In fact, he's repeatedly said there should be U.S. leadership. And if a formula can be worked out that allows for U.S. leadership without U.S. ownership, without the U.S. getting involved in long-term nation building, then this is a decision that President Trump will make that will be the second big decision to unlock a real post-war plan. The third big issue right now is, and you saw this in the New York Declaration and a plan that the United Arab Emirates announced back in July of 2024. They have all said there should be a role for the Palestinian Authority and a role for the United Nations, both of which are not acceptable to either Israel or the United States. So that leaves as the remaining option, the best available option, being an international governance for Gaza, as was set up for Bosnia after the Dayton Accords in 1997. And that kind of a model, which a number of
we've worked on such a plan.
Yes. So a number of us, former senior officials in the U.S. and Israeli government, but people who have had a lot of experience in how you set up post-war stabilization mechanisms, we have thought through many of the details that are very hard but absolutely essential. And so, for example, one of the reasons why I think Israelis mistrust a wholly Arab setup in Gaza is they want the assurance that Israel's security is going to be one of the top objectives of whoever governs Gaza for at least a transitional period. But you'll notice even Prime Minister Netanyahu has said Gaza will be eventually turned over to Palestinians.
Yes.
And so things need to happen to develop Palestinian civil society and governance to the point where when that turnover takes place, and it will take several years to train up a civil police and a gendarmerie, but as even
more than several years. If you look at Bosnia, right,
well,
we're still there's still international governance going on there to some extent.
Yes, but it's a very light touch.
But it's been 30 years.
Well, but there's been no civil war there since.
Right.
So it's been successful at least in that extent. So
right.
Bosnia has its problems, but I think the people of Gaza would rather have those kind of problems than the ones that they're experiencing right now for obvious reasons.
Yes.
And so a lot has to be done by this organization that will prevent Hamas from retaking power.
Right.
And in effect, this kind of practical challenge becomes enormously important when you're trying to work through the details of how you would set this up. So one of the things that you worked on was the importance of developing local political processes that build on Gaza's positive traditions, certainly the family clans and others. Those kinds of social networks exist. Palestinians in the West Bank and Gaza had a vibrant civil society compared to some other countries in the region. And so that needs to be acknowledged. But at the same time, you need to do things like take away Hamas's control over the local economy.
Right.
We talked in our work with a number of Palestinians, Palestinian Americans, Arab leaders, former officials in their governments, and got a really good understanding of the pernicious nature of the way Hamas controlled Gaza's economy, profited enormously from it, and yet turned that profit not towards institutions and and facilities that would really help the people of Gaza, but would instead spend it on tunnels and military forces that have resulted only in Gaza's destruction. And so you need to make sure.
So where does such an idea, do you think, stand right now?
Well, we heard out
the idea being of a multinational force that helps the Gazans, as you put it, evolve their local governance to the point that we can turn over to Palestinian governance of Gaza in some future date. But you need that force, right? Yes,
and we've talked obviously to former officials in the Biden administration. The Atlantic Council hosted Tony Blinken on his way out the door in January, who acknowledged that a good deal of planning had been done in the Pentagon by what he called the Interim Security Mission for Gaza, ISMG. So that file presumably exists somewhere in the Pentagon. But the plans that exist need to be turned from our 100-page study into the thousands of pages that the militaries of the world require when they deploy forces into Gaza. And especially since it won't be U.S. boots on the ground, but may involve the United States providing other kinds of support.
Logistics.
Logistics, intelligence.
Coordination with the IDF.
Air transport. We have the best air transport fleet of any military on the planet. And so a lot of these practical things are exactly what needs to be addressed. And so the problem that we noticed in a lot of these enormously ambitious and almost utopian visions of how Gaza could be if its people could fully take advantage of their location, their climate, the sunshine, and all the other attributes that Gaza has. You've got to go through the practical steps of how you get from the destruction we see now and the desperate situation of the Gazan people to what this better vision looks like.
Right.
It's going to take money. It's going to take an assurance that Hamas will not retake power. It's going to take commitments by countries, including in the Arab world, but including some non-Arab countries. Australia and the United Arab Emirates have a robust security partnership. That's one obvious thought. European countries have spoken out so often about their support for the Palestinian people. What would happen if the President of the United States calls up and says, I need a brigade of your troops. If we're going to really secure Gaza, you need to think about something like this.
Let's hope that we get there.
Well, this is clearly going to take presidential leadership, and that's why that decision is the one we're all waiting to see. We've heard a lot of words and commitments. Back in May of this year, there was talk of the United States thinking along the lines of this Emirati proposal that was similar to what you and I did. It's important to work through the details and to get us away from these glossy brochures into the real nuts and bolts of who has what authorities, where does this get funded from. Many of us, for example, have noticed that given Iran's responsibility for encouraging Hamas and funding some of its actions, perhaps frozen Iranian assets would be a way of funding international efforts to reconstruct Gaza.
There's a happy note.
There's more than a little social justice in Iranian assets being used to pay for the rehabilitation and governance of Gaza and for a Gaza free of Iranian influence to emerge with Iranian assets having funded it.
Well,
and frankly, Hamas and Hezbollah have billions of dollars of assets as well.
We don't know where they are, though, do we? Hamas assets.
This is one of the things that you do need the U.S. government to take the leadership in identifying where those are, and then getting other countries which have expressed their support for the Palestinian people to realize that getting that money out of Hamas's bank accounts and into bank accounts that will fund Gaza's reconstruction. This needs to be the normal way of thinking about how we should be working on a better future, because it is possible. All wars end, and the question is, do they end well or not? And if you and I learned anything in our experience, Bob, it's you can't do post-war reconstruction on the cheap.
No.
That has never worked. It did not work for us in Iraq,
where
they tried it, and it ended up costing far more in blood and treasure than if it had been done right in the first place. That's what has to happen here. It's going to have to be a serious effort, a funded effort, a robust effort. And countries, if they say they want a better future for Israel and Gaza, are going to have to actually now do the things that will be necessary to make that happen.
Well, let's hope that was a great overview from Iraq to terrorism to Gaza, a few of the high points. And I look forward to your thoughts on this in the future, Tom. It's always great working with you.
Glad to be with you,
Thank
Bob.
you.